Namaskar. Today, we're going to talk about ordinary stress, traumatic stress, and how we can use some very simple tools from yoga to build resiliency and to recover when we've been through trauma. So first of all, just a little bit of background with me. I've been now working in Romania for almost 18 years with children that have either been abandoned, neglected, or abused. And so I've been through some pretty serious traumas and, helping them to grow up, recover, integrate into life. In addition, I've also been involved in several humanitarian interventions with refugees and with, victims of earthquake and disasters. So I've developed a really simple way of helping people to understand their own reactions to stress and some, really easy tools that can be applied right away to feel better. So first of all, let's talk about stress. When I say the word stress, most people, we just think of stress as only negative, as just something that we want to escape from and reduce as much as possible in our life. But if you think about it, the times that we are the most optimized and that we have the best performance is when there's just the right amount of stress in our lives. For example, a deadline creates stress, But when you have a deadline to do something, it actually mobilizes you. You have to get that done. You're running at the last minute maybe to do it, but it brings out often some of your potential, some of your creativity, some of your productivity gets better optimized when you have just the right amount of stress. So the same thing with if you are involved in sports and you decide to run a marathon, you have to put your body under stress to be able to run a marathon. You have to go out and train. You have to, build up your strength through putting your body under a certain type of stress. And that, through going through that, you build your muscles, you build your strength, you build your endurance, you build your capacity, you build your speed, and then you can run the marathon. So a lot of our peak experiences, our best experiences are when we have the right amount of stress in our lives. But what happens is that, stress can overwhelm sometimes our ability to integrate it, to absorb it, and to utilize it productively. So let's take the example of a glass and water. So the water is going to represent stress. Actually, the cup's never really completely empty, but let's say, you wake up in the morning after a nice restful sleep. There's just a little bit of water in the cup, and there's all this empty space. This empty space represents the space that you have for tolerating stress. And, let's say right after you wake up, you get a phone call and your boss is telling you that you're late for work and you realize you've overslept. And that adds some stress. And then you're running around looking for your keys and you can't remember where you put them. And so you're adding some more stress into the cup. And now your kids are crying. One of them was sick last night and they're crying and not feeling well, and you have to figure out some kind of childcare for them, and you're worried about them, and, more stress. And you have some important work to do. You're already late, and now you get into your car, you're driving, and there's a big traffic jam, and you're stuck in traffic. More stress, like this. So the stress just keeps adding into the cup. Cup's getting more and more full. Somebody might even then ask you, what are your plans for in 3 days? You can't even, it irritates you that they're even asking. You start to just get irritable, reactive to even small, simple things because that stress is just accumulating. And what happens? Eventually, a few more, now the cup is so full that it won't take much. It might just be one more, phone call with somebody who isn't speaking to you nicely to just make the cup overflow. So what does it mean when the cup overflows? When the cup overflows, it means, that's when you lose control. That's when you're not your best self. That's when you start to have reactions you don't like about yourself. Now, when you start to just be angry or, to cry or to just be very reactive, we've all had moments where our cup has gotten too full and it's overwhelmed us, and we start having reactions and we don't like it. We don't feel in control anymore. Usually a sign that your cup was overflowing is that afterwards you really regret it and you're like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? It wasn't the right thing to do. So we can all get into this state. It's happened to all of us. We all recognize it. We all know what we are like. Some people's tendencies when they're overwhelmed is that they shut down and they become really closed. Other people's tendency is to become, really irritable, angry, furious, aggressive. Other people, have more like run away from the situation. So, fight, flight, freeze. There's different types of reactions we have to our cup overflowing. Now, what to do when the cup is that full? What can you do? Obviously you need to empty the cup a bit. No, how do you empty the cup? It is possible to empty the cup. The cup's not just getting full, 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 full. There's plenty of things that we do all the time that help to empty the cup. And these are our resiliency strategies. Might be different types of hobbies, spending time with loved ones, good relationship, good communication, feeling listened and understood by a good friend, getting a hug, cuddling a cat or a child, doing sports, walking in nature. All of these things are great. They all empty the cup. They all help us to regain, a sense of peace. But there is something that you can always do. It might be hard. You might not have friends available exactly in that moment. You might not be able to leave and go for a walk in nature. There's something that you can always do. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't need to depend on anybody else. It's always with you. And that is simply the tool of diaphragmatic breathing. No, the yogic breathing. So, many times we say to people like, oh, breathe. Well, of course you're breathing. It can even be irritating if somebody tells you to breathe because, obviously if I'm breathing, if I wasn't breathing, I wouldn't be here. But when we say breathe, it's not just breathing in an ordinary way, because a lot of us are breathing very superficially. And this even can increase the sense of anxiety. If we breathe more deeply, but superficially only with our chest, it can even make you hyperventilate and increase the sensation of anxiety rather than calm it down. So yogic breathing means to learn to breathe with the abdomen, to breathe in from the belly like this and really fill the bottom of the lungs with air first, and then that fills up the rest of the lungs. But this type of breathing gives even an internal massage to this whole area of the abdomen, like Manipura chakra in Sanskrit, that tends to really become tight, or the Anahata chakra, where also a lot of anxiety accumulates. And so this type of breathing really releases that. This type of slow breathing in and breathing out more slowly than you breathe in. I usually advise people because most people are blocked and they don't even realize it. And even if they try to breathe deeply, they're still only breathing with the chest, and you can see it. They're breathing like this. And so it can help to lie down on the ground and have a teddy bear or something on we call it with kids, teddy bear breathing. Okay, with adults, you can put a pillow. But something that is visible without straining your neck so that you can see the motion going up and down, that helps you to train or retrain your muscles to be able to breathe like this. And you have to practice when you're relaxed, because when you're in the middle of stress, it's already going to be, the breathing's already going to be tight and blocked. So that's not the best moment to try it for the first time. You should try it in a relatively relaxed situation. Now, back to, this is just right now talking about ordinary stress and ordinary stress management, and you might already know this. What happens, the difference with trauma, is when the cup is full because of traumatic stress is happening, unusual stress. When that stress keeps coming in faster than we are able to create space again in the cup, then when it starts overflowing, and we have no control over it, we can't stop it. It just keeps going. That's when it's becoming trauma. It's not just the experience of ordinary stress, which can be intense, but kind of like stops, no? And then we can just, resettle ourselves with even just with ordinary methods, even without knowing the yogic breathing. But when traumatic events just keep happening, and the essence of trauma is also when you have no control. When you feel no control, there's intense feelings. You don't know when they're going to end. They keep going on, and that kind of like feeling of loss of control is one of the things that's really characteristic of what makes it traumatic. However, human beings have extraordinary reserves of resiliency. And it's been really interesting, to know when I've been attending psychological first aid trainings with one of my colleagues when we've been dealing with the refugee situation in Romania, and to find out that actually the vast majority of people, even undergoing super traumatic types of events, will not remain with long-term scars. Why? Because the majority of people will have enough social support around them, and that social support, that social community, the relationships, good relationships, they just help us. Connection, not being alone, feeling understood and supported, that just goes a long way to reducing the long-term effects of trauma. But it depends. If the person already the cup was already pretty full, and there was already a lot of stress going on in life, maybe because of underlying, psychological issues or whatever, just other types of like problems with relationships, types of disabilities or alcoholism or some other factor that makes the person more sensitive, the cup's more full. And so when you get the traumatic stress on top of it, then it can be more difficult to like come back to normal. And people find themselves much more reactive than usual. So part of it is also understanding, have you been through a traumatic situation and your reactions are just a normal kind of response to abnormal events? Because to some extent, everybody's going to have, after traumatic events, is going to be experiencing things like difficulty sleeping, somatic types of symptoms, flashbacks, different types of signs of, that you've been through something very strong, very traumatic. What happens is that your nervous system goes on high alert to protect you, because if you're undergoing trauma, then your body is trained to self-protect, and you have instincts that are going to, be triggered in your brain, deeper brain stem, amygdala, like really survival type brain, and will help to protect you by putting your nervous system into the state of high alert. Now, this is called the sympathetic nervous system, and that includes that your breathing pattern changes. Your breathing pattern, your heart rate, your blood pressure, all of these things are changing to optimize themselves to protect you. So it's an adaptive response, it's a good response, but if it goes on for too long, then it means your cup is always super, super, super full. There's hardly any space in your cup. Even small little extra stresses, you're gonna have a disproportionate reaction to them. So yes, what we can do about that is when we're able to consciously empty the cup regularly. And especially when people have been through trauma, you don't know which people might, which of us might be a little bit more sensitive, and it might, be more sticky, the trauma to us, because of underlying other issues that mean we were already pretty full. No matter if we're like that or if we've been through trauma and we are pretty resilient, your sympathetic system is going to be on high alert, and you're going to be feeling weird and, stressed more than usual, more reactive than usual. And so having the skill to consciously pour out the water, to consciously like empty the cup and have more space again, more spaciousness, more freedom in your not being just controlled by every little reaction that comes up, is really going to dramatically improve your resiliency, your capacity to quickly heal and overcome the event. And one of the main things that scientifically has been proven to turn off the stress response is to trigger your relaxation response. And you can trigger your relaxation response by the deep breathing. The deep breathing, the pattern of deep breathing is something that actually tells your nervous system on a very visceral level that I am safe enough to relax, because your body and mind work like a two-way street. So if it's easier to control and to change something physically about your body than it is to totally change your thoughts, to change what you're thinking. Because obviously your stress and your reactions, they actually start with how you're thinking and the kind of meaning or fears or extra layers that you put on to whatever's happened to you. There's a book about why zebras don't get ulcers. Why do zebras not get ulcers? Well, because they don't overthink things. They don't catastrophize about things. They just, okay, they hear some, branches moving and they think a tiger is coming, and they, appropriately their instincts kick in of fear and protect them, and they run away. But they don't stress out and start, imagining tigers and thinking about it, in other moments. They just react when it's actually a danger. We, on the other hand, our minds, do all kinds of things that can amplify what's ever happened, by going through the filters of our mind. So that's a little harder to access directly. It's much easier to access something physical and do something about it. And it gives you more of a sense of power and control, especially when traumatic things, like I said, the main characteristic is you feel out of control. So breathing is something that you can very quickly and easily learn to master and control, and then you've just got this in your toolbox, and it's accessible at any time of day or night. And when you breathe deeply in that two-way street of body and mind, you are telling your whole physiological system, you're mimicking the way that you breathe when you are deeply relaxed. Because this is a spontaneous way to breathe after super relaxing deep sleep. You might wake up and find yourself breathing like that with the whole body and just very relaxed and slow, and you feel very refreshed and relaxed and comfortable, So if you're able to recreate that same physiological state, the mind will follow. The feelings of relaxation will come. The stress state will be turned off, and you will re-experience yourself without that hyper alert state. If you're still experiencing ongoing stress, it might come back, but then you've got that tool in your pocket, and you can train yourself when you start to feel the sensations, the first sensations of anxiety, panic, etc. coming. Then you can already start using this tool to calm yourself down, calm your system down, and you'll experience more spaciousness in the cup, more ability to choose your reactions instead of just being controlled, knee-jerk, whatever stimulation happens, you just react to it. So this is a tool which is, related to the meditation practice. The deep breathing is also one of the first, you could say, fundamental steps of it. Meditation's so much more than deep breathing, though. But you can't meditate properly if your mind is all, triggered in a state of high alert and anxiety. And you need to learn first to control the physical base, and to create that space in your mind, that openness, to trigger that relaxation response. And then, being able to direct your thoughts where you want them to go instead of them just running all over the place, that's when we start getting into the practice of meditation. And for that, I encourage you to sign up to our free course, to learn all the steps, step by step, how to meditate and to, fully benefit then from these tools. Because, when you're able to meditate and experience, generate, that sense of connectedness, that sense of love, belonging, goodness from within, that's the ultimately most healing thing that exists. And it can clear out all kinds of complexes and traumas and things like this, together with other methods, but it is one of the best paths for the full development of our personality and the full healing of the different types of traumas that we might have experienced. So I encourage you to sign up for the course if you haven't done it yet, and to share these tools, both with yourself, with your friends, or with anybody that might be going through something difficult. And I hope that it helps and brings more peace, more healing, more inner joy back to your life. Namaskar. Namaskar. I don't even really know how to express how grateful I am for all of those of you that are working behind the scenes with your donations, with volunteer work, with professionalism to really make the Meditation Steps project successful and reach this vision that we have of bringing the tools of meditation, the philosophy that underpins it, the lifestyle practices, to as many people as possible for free all over the world. So it's just a big honor to be part of it, and it wouldn't be possible without the support. So you can find more about how to join and how to be part of this vision. And if you're feeling the benefit of these practices, of the philosophy, let's work together to get it to as many people as possible. Find out how you can do that below in the description, and there will be some links there. And I hope that together we can really transform this world with a flood of compassion, love, and inner peace that comes from meditation. Thank you.